that police officer, right, in that case, has now been charged with felony murder as well as 11 other charges. His name is Garrett Rolfe. He's 27. He is charged with murder in Brooks's death. He could face life in prison or the death penalty for shooting a man who broke away from police custody, resisted arrest, stole a taser, and tried to taser him. And now the DA is just, he's either a liar or an idiot. I'm going to go with a liar. And he's following in the footsteps of the mayor. Right? The mayor is just awful, obviously. The mayor of Atlanta, she suggested right away, her last name is Bottoms. I'm trying to remember her first name. She said right after this that the shooting was unjust, based on nothing, because we've all seen the tape. Doesn't matter. She said it was unjust right away.
While there may be debate as to whether this was an appropriate use of deadly force, I firmly believe that there is a clear distinction between what you can do and what you should do. I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force and have called for the immediate termination of the officer.
So she fired the officer right away, and then she declared that it was a murder, essentially. And then the DA picked up on that. And the reason that the DA picked up on that is, again, because the DA is in the middle of a hard-fought re-election battle. He also happens to be under investigation for a corruption case. So this is so political, it's insane. I mean, back in May, the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, opened an investigation into the Fulton County District Attorney. The guy's name is Paul Howard. He apparently, allegedly, used a nonprofit to funnel at least $140,000 in City of Atlanta funds to supplement his salary, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He's being challenged in the Democratic primary for re-election. He's also facing allegations of sexual harassment, which he strongly denies. So he's in the middle of a bad re-election battle. He's under investigation by the GBI. And so he's decided, you know what, time to make a headline for myself in a different way and pander to black voters by unjustly charging a man. I mean, that's obviously what is going on right here. He's attempting to pander to Democratic primary-based voters, particularly black voters, by suggesting that racial justice is being done on behalf of a man who stole a police officer's taser and tried to tase the police officer and then was shot for his trouble. So here are the charges that he's being charged with. And we need to actually point this out because the charges conflict. I mean, the whole thing is, when you hear the DA, you'll see how insane this is. Okay, so Rolfe is facing a bunch of charges, felony murder. He's also facing aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The offense carries a possible sentence of 1 to 20 years. That is because he shot at him. Aggravated assault for kicking Brooks. So this was the only real bombshell that was released by the DA, is that apparently there's third-party footage of Rolfe kicking the suspect when he's down. Now, the problem is he didn't actually show the footage. All he showed was a still from the footage. So it would be nice to see the actual footage. But if Brooks was kicked by Rolfe after he'd been shot, that would be a case for assault. It would not be a case for felony murder. And if you kick somebody, that doesn't mean you killed them. Right? That is an assault charge. That is not a felony murder charge. But this is my favorite part of the indictment. So the DA, first of all, normally the way this goes is that the DA works with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation does the investigation, and then they work with the DA to bring charges. This DA rushed out the charges without consulting with the GBI, perhaps because the GBI is investigating him right now. Okay, and then he just rushed forward and did what no prosecutor is supposed to do. He presented all of the evidence in a very selective fashion before this thing has even gone to a grand jury. By the way, the actual result of this is that it will go to a grand jury and it probably will not go forward to prosecution. So he's making a headline right now, and then the prosecution probably will not go forward because I cannot imagine a grand jury going along with the idea that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this officer was involved in a felony murder. That's insane. Okay, but here's my favorite part. He gets an aggravated assault charge for kicking Brooks. According to an arrest warrant, Rolfe was wearing a shoe, quote, which, when used offensively against a person, is likely to or actually does result in serious bodily injury. Now, the reason I particularly like this charge is because, as you will see, this DA is claiming that if you fire a taser at somebody, that you are not in threat of serious bodily injury. If you kick somebody, yes, the shoe is a weapon that could be used for serious bodily injury, but a taser is not a weapon that could be used for serious bodily injury. Also, 4 counts of violation of oath by a public officer, a felony offense under Georgia law, each offense carrying a sentence of 1 to 5 years. Prosecutors say that Rolfe broke his oath and didn't follow police department policies when he used a taser as Brooks ran away. Failure to render timely medical aid to Brooks, because after he was shot, it took a couple of minutes for them to render medical aid. And failed to tell him he was under arrest for driving under the influence. You know, about the time when you are being arrested for driving under the influence after a 25-minute questioning for driving under the influence, I figured that people might know that they are being put under arrest for driving under the influence, which might be why you resist arrest and run away. I don't understand. Is the implication here that Brooks thought that this guy was going to take him home for dinner? Like, that he didn't realize what he was being arrested for? What absolute absurdity. By the way, the other officer is now being charged as well. What did the other officer do? He's facing an aggravated assault charge for standing on or stepping on Brooks' shoulder while he was lying on the ground. Which, by the way, we haven't seen the footage of that. Perhaps the reason is because the guy's run before and you don't know if he's actually dying, right? So we don't know any of that. He's also charged with 2 violations of oath of office, which is basically just a tack-on charge. We're going to get to more of this in just a second because this sort of bullcrap, we'll get to the DA's statements, it's insane. This sort of bullcrap charge has a real consequence for policing. And the DA also happens to be lying about some of the facts here. This particular indictment, the charges are just absurd. They're absurd on virtually every level. And the DA, his presentation of the facts are just crazy. So the DA says, at the time that Rayshard Brooks was shot, he didn't pose an immediate threat of death or injury to the officer. In fact, the DA actually said that he was very calm and collected in his interaction with the police. That's true up until the point he tries to break away from the police, takes 2 of them to the ground, takes a taser off the body of one of them, and then tries to shoot the other. You know, up until then, it was going fine. Right? How's it going? They asked the man who had just jumped from the 7th story. On the 4th story, he said, everything's going fine so far. The interaction was good until it was not good. Right? Like, this is insane. Here is the Fulton County DA who should summarily be dismissed from his job for this prosecution. It's an absurdity. It's an absurdity from the outset, from the get-go. It's all on tape. This is crazy. Here's the Fulton County DA just saying an idiotic thing.
Based on the way that these officers conducted themselves while Mr. Brooks was lying there, that the demeanor of the officers immediately after the shooting did not reflect any fear or danger of Mr. Brooks. We've concluded at the time Mr. Brooks was shot that he did not pose an immediate threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or officers.
Oh, did you conclude that now? No serious threat of death or injury to the officers. So again, to get this straight, someone fires a taser at you. That's not a threat of death or immediate injury to the officer, but a shoe is, according to the actual charges filed against the officer. Plus, I will note that 2 weeks ago, the same DA prosecuted officers on the basis of using a taser and called the taser a deadly weapon. I think my favorite part of this particular clip is that there's a picture of the man who's speaking right behind the man who's speaking, which is one of my favorite things. I always love that sort of stuff. That little detail where there's a picture of you behind you as you speak is pretty spectacular. It's like a Jim Acosta infinite regress of arrogance. Here is this DA.
Charged with aggravated assault of Ms. Pilgrim, and this is for pointing a taser at Mrs. Pilgrim. And as many of you all know, under Georgia law, a taser is considered as a deadly weapon under Georgia law.
Oh, is it? Is it now? Oh, well, that's weird. Case dismissed, I feel like. Right, seriously, I mean, like, the defense attorneys, all they have to do is play the tape of the DA saying this, and the case is dismissed. Then, he's not just going to lie about that. He also says that one officer has become a cooperative witness. Okay, so he says this yesterday. He says the second officer is now cooperating with us and is a cooperative state's witness. There's only one problem with this. The attorney says, no, not true. She says, that's not the case. We're not going to cooperate with this DA because he's railroading people.
Because Officer Brosnan is now becoming a cooperating witness for the state, we are asking the court to grant a bond of $50,000 and to allow Mr. Officer Brosnan to sign that bond. As I indicated, that he would become one of the first police officers to actually indicate that he is willing to testify against someone in his own department.
This is a lie. It is not true. The attorney for the other officer, whose name is Devin Brosnan, they said he's cooperating with the Fulton County DA's investigation and met with the ADA yesterday. But he has not agreed to be a state's witness or to testify in any court hearing or to plead guilty to any charge. The decision to initiate charges by the Fulton County DA's office is irrational, obviously based on factors which should have nothing to do with the proper administration of justice. This was not a rush to judgment. It was a rush to misjudgment. According to the lawyer, he also said that Brooks used the taser he took from Brosnan against the officer as he resisted arrest and later ran from the scene. The lawyer says that Brosnan sustained burns from the taser. Samuel also states that when Brooks began to violently resist arrest, Brosnan's head hit the asphalt parking lot, and he was later diagnosed with a concussion. But don't worry, he was not a danger to anyone. Brooks. Okay, so this is perfectly insane. I mean, perfectly insane. But apparently, all this is okay. Now, again, the only piece of new evidence that we actually got from the DA yesterday was the still photo of Rolfe kicking Brooks. We haven't seen the actual video, so we don't know what was happening at the time other than the still photo. So this was the only piece of new evidence, which would suggest that even if that was the case, that he ran up to the guy and kicked him, apparently the other piece of evidence he said is that he said to his partner, "I got him," which, by the way, is not evidence that you tried to murder somebody. If you're trying to collar a suspect and the guy fires a taser at you and you shoot him, you say, "I got him," that doesn't mean I wanted to murder the black guy I just had a 30-minute conversation with in the parking lot of Wendy's. That is not what that means. That is not evidence of intent to murder, you idiot. Okay, so the Fulton County DA put out the kick. Okay, the kick is an assault. So you charge him with assault. That's called an assault. Okay, but you don't charge somebody with felony murder for kicking somebody. That's not how this works. That's not how this works at all.
When we examined the videotape and in our discussions with witnesses, what we discovered is during the 2 minutes and 12 seconds that Officer Rolfe actually kicked Mr. Brooks while he laid on the ground, while he was there fighting for his life.
Okay, and then we don't actually release the tape. We just release a still. Forgive me if I don't trust this DA, who seems to be completely full of crap, politically motivated, and under investigation by the GBI. Forgive me if I have problems believing that this guy is really acting in the interest of justice rather than in the interest of his own career and in the interest of so-called racial justice, which suggests that in order to rectify the imbalances of criminal justice in American history, this means that we have to straighten out the stats, even if that means that people who ought not go to jail, and people who ought to go to jail ought not go to jail. Okay, this is very, incredibly dangerous stuff that we're engaged in. Thank you for tuning in to The Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our content.